Hello everyone and welcome to our channel, Dr. Hamza الكناني, and this is our political dialogue. Our guest today for this show is an expert politician, Professor Cynthia McKinney. She is a former Congresswoman and 2008 presidential candidate for the presidency of the United States of America for the Green Party, and she is an assistant professor at North-South University. So great to have you here, and welcome to our channel, Professor Cynthia McKinney.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me to share a little time and a few ideas with you.
Thank you, Professor Cynthia McKinney. I'm delighted to have you with us today. We will talk about several important points today, starting with the Ukraine war, the war in Gaza, and the Middle East crisis, passing through the files of Iran, North Korea, China, and the Arab countries, and talking about the multipolar society, ending this show with the American elections. So, Professor Cynthia McKinney, let's start with the Ukraine war because there is a lot going on there. Many political analysts have talked about the Russia-Ukraine war as a war of attrition for the Russian army, continuing for unclear reason. However, we would like to explore other potential factors that may be influencing the conflicts. Additionally, we are interested in understanding the long-term strategic goals of the US in that region, the Russian and Ukraine region, and how they relate of the ongoing conflict.
I was just going to say that one aspect of the Russia-Ukraine war that is oftentimes overlooked is the religious aspect, because what I have paid some attention to is Ukraine as an Orthodox Christian country, and the leadership after the U.S. inaugurated coup against the Ukrainian elected leadership. Then Ukraine became, at least at the top of the entire state structure, became a Jewish-led country. And on the other side, you have Russia as an Orthodox country, and its allies inside its Russian allies are the Muslims, the Chechens, and the Chechens are doing the most ferocious fighting. And if you listen to the Chechens, not only do the Russians believe that they also are Russians as well, but if you listen to the Orthodox Christian Russians, they view this special military operation as an existential use of violence because Russia itself is threatened. The country, of course, and you know, the United States has at least floated ideas among its think tanks to balkanize Russia into an additional 15 other countries. So this is something that the United States is very adept at doing, having color revolutions and balkanizing other states, as they did with Yugoslavia and the bombing there, and subsequently the balkanization of Serbia, what was left of Yugoslavia, and then balkanizing Serbia and creating Kosovo. And as a result of the creation of Kosovo, Kosovo now is the home to one of the largest U.S. military bases in Europe. So the United States is very good at doing this. And if the United States wants to balkanize Russia, you can guarantee that they have experience in doing so, and that the Russians are fighting an existential threat to their state. In addition to that, you've got the situation in Ukraine where the United States basically overthrew a democratically elected government. And I'm not going to comment to the quality of that government, but what I will say, it was a government that reflected the people of Ukraine. But Zelensky, who has already called Ukraine Big Israel, obviously is intent on creating something that is not really sort of indigenous to the region.
What about the consequences, Professor McKinney, given the apparent desire of Western powers to prolong the Russia-Ukraine conflict? From your viewpoint, what are the potential long-term consequences for global stability, economic relations, and the balance of power between major world players? players?
Well, it doesn't appear to me that the people who control the United States are in any way, and for that matter, the United Kingdom as well, and Germany and the rest of the European Union, it doesn't appear to me that they're interested in any way in abbreviating the war. They want to carry it on as long as they can. What this does is it drains, theoretically, it's supposed to drain Russia of its munitions, but it appears that the United States, which has shifted most of its manufacturing capacity outside of the United States to China, seems that the United States has hurt itself, and the European Union is hurting itself by cutting off the access to cheap Russian oil and gas. And so thank goodness there was a relatively warm winter last winter, but we don't know what's coming up. And now that there's even less Russian oil and gas going into Europe at a much higher cost, I don't know, who's draining who at this point. So I think we're stuck with this for a very long time, notwithstanding the fact that BlackRock has purchased most of the arable land in Ukraine. And I don't think BlackRock makes losing bets. And so the interests that own BlackRock will continue to drain the United States taxpayers until BlackRock is able to see its investment pay off.
Professor McKinney, before we leave Russian and Ukraine war topic, I would like you to clarify some point. How do leaders like President Zelensky shape their nation's narrative during conflicts? Also, how do historical events such as U.S. involvement in Afghanistan or the creation of Israel inform our understanding of current conflicts like those between Ukraine and Russia? Additionally, how much influence do U.S. citizens have on their government's international actions?
Well, I think we need to pay attention to what Zelensky has said already. And Zelensky is just a mouthpiece who is pumped up by Western Europe and by the United States and the United Kingdom. And this is not like, everybody in the United States. These are the ruling individuals who have control of the apparatus of the state in the United States and in the United Kingdom and in the European Union. So we're talking about a very small group of people. However, no matter how small they are, and invisible as well, we also just need to pay attention to what's being said. So now, if Ukraine is to become big Israel, then let's take a look at little Israel. And the justification for little Israel was a land without a people for a people without a land. Well, if you look at the killing that's going on of the Orthodox Christians in Ukraine, basically they are the cannon fodder that's being slaughtered. Now, I don't like any kind of war at all. And the killing on both sides disturbs me, but I absolutely understand the existential threat that exists to the state of the Russian Federation, because it is my country, the United States, that is responsible for most of the violence around the world, either overtly or covertly. And now we are looking at this situation. The United States in 1979 preceded the Russian involvement in Afghanistan. The United States was already there, stoking the Russian bear to go into Afghanistan. So the United States does this. And I'm in South Asia right now where the United States is doing this again. So there's no part of the world that is safe from those who control the structures of the state of the United States. The problem is that the people of the United States have allowed this to happen, and they continue to allow this to happen, and they continue to be bullied around by a small group of people who have control of the Treasury as in the Federal Reserve, and of the state in the legislative branch and the executive branches of the United States government.
Professor McKinney, I'm sure you have something to add regarding the double standards. Global politics often shows double standards and hidden powers. This is so obvious in the Middle East and Ukraine. history and politics there reveal how invisible and dominant group use colonialism and tricks to stay in power.
Well, one shouldn't be surprised at double standards coming out of the United States. If you look at the founders of the United States, they were slaveholders. So a country that was created of, for, and by the people was only created of, for, and by some of the people. And women didn't have the right to vote. So, double standards is the name of the game. And you could say that that's a part of politics. But I also don't accept the characterization that is routinely used around the world to describe a particular part of the world, Middle East. What is it middle to? And who is it middle to? So I say West Asia and North Africa. And of course, that is an area of contention because, of course, you have the United Kingdom that gifted the land of Palestine to the Jews and allowed them to form what they call a Jewish homeland to the detriment of the people who are already there, which is exactly a parallel to what's going on in Ukraine. It's been maneuvered that way so that it's not the same culprits, but in reality, it is, because it is those culprits that moved NATO all the way to the Russian border. It was those culprits that then organized the coup. It was those culprits that were operating biolabs in Ukraine so that they could get the key to life for the Slav population so that they could eliminate the Slav population. This is a war of genocide, and the genocide is being committed on one side, not on both sides. So if we look at the reality of what is happening and the intention of those, George Herbert Walker Bush called them the lunatics in the asylum. Well, now they control the state. They control the apparatus of the state of the United States. They control the apparatus of the state of the United Kingdom, and they control the apparatus of the state of the European Union. No longer can Italy and Germany and France have their individual say, and Spain and the other countries, they don't have their individual say as used to be the case. Now the power has been centralized to people whose names and faces the average European doesn't even know who they are. And the similar situation exists in the United States, where if you ask the average US taxpayer who really controls the United States, they couldn't tell you who, because the control is one popular, it's not a movie, but a serial show that appeared on UK television said you fight your way to the top and then you find out it's only the middle. There's other people at the top who are calling the shots. And those are the ones that are nameless and faceless who need to be named and whose faces need to be shown.
Well done, Professor McKinney. Since you mentioned the genocide in Gaza, let me take you to the war and the genocide that is now taking place in Gaza. How has the visibility of Israel action in Gaza changed over time, and what impact has this had on the awareness of the suffering of the Palestinian people?
Well, as someone who's been to Gaza, let me tell you that now we're actually able to see the face of Israel, whereas before that face was hidden. But the people of Gaza are suffering nonetheless, and the children are suffering, have always been suffering. They've been suffering. The people of Palestine have been suffering since the creation of the state of Israel. Now, more people are aware of the suffering, but the suffering exists nonetheless. And so you've got, 15,000 children that have been killed. So the thing has been accelerated, but Israel didn't even allow chocolate to come in because they were counting the calories. They didn't want the Palestinians to thrive. The question that I would have, I'm not so surprised at anything Israel does, and the supporters of Israel who live in other countries, I'm not surprised at anything they do. But what I am surprised at is what the Muslims don't do. And as far as I'm concerned, you only have a few Muslim majority states that are actually fighting to defend the integrity of Palestine. The rest of them have sold their souls to, whoever it is, that they've sold their souls to the Jews of the world.
Since you mentioned Muslims countries, I have a question. I'm gonna ask you about Muslims countries later on, but we still now in the Palestine topic. Do you think what has been going on in Palestine affected the neighboring countries of Palestine, such as Libya, Syria, and others?
The reason Syria is under attack is because Syria was steadfastly in support of Palestine. The reason Libya was under attack is because Libya was steadfastly supportive of Palestine. Those countries that are under attack are supportive of Palestine. Well, there's no bombs dropping in the United Arab Emirates, although United Arab Emirates did help to destroy Libya. I was there in Libya. I've been there in Syria when the bombs were dropping, and Qatar the same for as far as Libya is concerned. So we know those states that help the Palestinians, and we know the states that haven't helped the Palestinians. Iran is on the front line because Iran could have sold out, but they didn't. So you've got some states that didn't sell out, and they are the ones that are under frontal attack and by the entire world, and they're withstanding this attack. And then you've got those people who have succumbed to the dictates of the Jewish state, and as a result, they are allowed to survive and thrive. That is not the situation that it doesn't fit with my values, and I try my best to do whatever it is that is within my power to stop the slaughter and the carnage. The unfortunate thing is that everything that I have done in the past has been insufficient. Everything that most of us have done in the past has been insufficient. We have been acting as individuals. We've been acting as groups of individuals, but what we need is state sponsorship and state power to brutally confront the state power that is assaulting the Palestinian people and all of the Muslim world for that matter.
Since you mentioned Emirates and other Muslim countries, in your opinion, why do some of Muslim majority states sell out their sovereignty to the West?
Why do some of the Muslim majority states sell out to the I suspect maybe they're Eurocentric and they believe that if it's the West, it's the best, and if it's white, it's right, because you have that kind of backwards mentality among the formerly colonized peoples of the world. And they have not yet come to the point of believing that they too have dignity and they have worth in and of themselves without trying to whiten their skin or bleach their hair and all of the things that we see happening, buying the Chanel shoes and carrying Ferragamo purses. At the end of the day, that does not give you dignity. Dignity is something that comes from deep inside your soul and your being, and it comes with from the knowledge of who you are and love of self. And that is something that I see largely lacking in all of the formerly colonized parts of the world.
Professor, well done, Professor McKinney. As you said at the beginning of this interview, the Zelensky said that Ukraine is a big Israel. So are they associated with Jews community in Palestine and around the world? What they do?
You basically have Israel firsters who believe in Israel more than they believe in the United States. And they have seized control of the governing apparatus of the state of the United States of America. They control. So basically, you're talking to, just as with Zelensky, who is a Jewish Ukrainian, you're talking to Jewish Americans, you're talking to Jewish Israelis, and they all believe in the supremacy, actually, what is it called? It's called Organized International Jewish Supremacy. And so it's organized, whether you're talking Argentina, you're talking Bolivia, you're talking United States, you're talking Mexico. It doesn't really matter where you're talking, because you've got this international unity that exists among the Jewish world. And there's nothing wrong with unity. I just wish that the rest of us could find the kind of unity that we need in order to defeat the warmongering that exists because of these ideas about Greater Israel Project and taking Israel from Israel actually is the one that wants to go from the river, from the Euphrates River to the Nile River. So that's the Greater Israel Project. And so if you're not aware of these things, you're not aware of just about a week ago, I participated in I guess you could say a spaces on the internet for X and Twitter, what used to be Twitter, where we looked at the protocols of the learned elders of Zion. And I understand that there, in some cases, say that document is in fact a forgery. Well, it might be a forgery, but it also comports with what our experience is right now. So I would recommend that people read it. And the next document that we're going to read, I've been told for years and years and years that I need to study that document. I need to study the Talmud, and I have not done so. And so I think it's important for us to understand what it is that these people who are so organized in an international, intergenerational way, that we understand what they believe. And in order for us to understand what they believe, we have to read their documents. And that's what I have begun to do. And once you read them, then you will understand that there is a subterranean war going on. So basically, this attack on the Islamic world, this attack on the non-Jewish world is going to continue until we have been subdued. And so now there are some of us who believe, okay, well, we believe in a multipolar world. We're fighting for the opportunity for all states to be able to live and thrive according to their own wishes of their own populations. But if that multipolarism that we're being introduced to now is basically still controlled by this same international organized Jewry, then we're just changing faces and not really having a deep substantive institutional change. What I am in favor of is deep substantive international change, so that the multipolarism with which we are presented is actually a multipolarism that is made by the various peoples of the world.
Professor Cynthia, since you believe in a multipolar society, how has the political and economic relationship between the United States and China evolved over time? Can you give us your evaluation of the relationship between China and the United States in general?
Well, it was U.S. policy that stripped the United States of its manufacturing capacity. The policy was to reward the companies with tax breaks if they dismantled their operation and then moved it to China. So you could say that China and its manufacturing capacity, now it is the manufacturer for the world, but that was largely done by way of U.S. policy. I was a part of that U.S. policy. I was a part of the Congress at the time, and I was fighting that policy because those tax breaks. I introduced legislation to deny tax breaks to any company that would move from the United States, dismantle itself, and then relocate to another country and put my constituents and other U.S. taxpayers and working people of the United States out of their jobs. But that was exactly what was done, and that was the policy. So now we see that the coupling that took place between Chinese capacity and the U.S. know-how now has been built up. And of course, that has built the People's Republic of China. And the People's Republic of China, in turn, what did it do with its newfound wealth? Well, it obliterated dire poverty inside China. So if you go to China, which I do often, you go to China and you see, one of the things you don't see, you don't see people begging on the streets, people living on the streets like you do. It's commonplace in the United States. So I didn't see that when I was in Libya as well. You don't see those states that chose a different path for development. Those states that had access to oil wealth and they decided to use that oil wealth for their people. Those things you don't see. And those are the very states that were either co-opted, as in the Gulf Cooperation community states, or they were overthrown, as in Libya. Libya also had a central bank that was owned by the people of Libya. And the first thing that was done was the theft of the gold in Libya. Now, the same people also have stolen the gold reportedly in Ukraine. It's the first thing that goes. But what is it that about Syria that is distinctive? It is that the people of Syria own their central bank. They don't owe any money to anybody, or they didn't. And so this was a problem. So as contrasted with the United States, where our central bank is privately owned. I don't have any stake in the central bank of the United States. The Federal Reserve is not federal and it's not a reserve. Yet it gets to house a lot of the world's gold. And when countries like Venezuela, after the Bolivarian Revolution, said, we want our gold back, they were told you can't have it. So I think only now is a portion of it being repatriated back to Venezuela, which is why Venezuela's Maduro is under attack. So I think we cannot rely on the international media to tell us anything, because they won't. It's shows like yours that will allow people to sort of dig underneath the carpet and find out what actually is moving up under there. And it's only that look underneath the carpet that lets you know the reality of what actually is happening in international affairs or even in domestic affairs as well.
Thank you so much, Professor Cynthia McKinney, for your word. It's a huge support for our channel, and our channel for sure will be always independent. Let's talk about the United States elections. Actually, the United States elections are taking every other country's attention. Trump and the Kamala Harris, to whom you will give your vote and your support?
Well, to be honest, until the United States has regime change, so that we and the regime that change that needs to happen is a return to US constitutionalism. But right now we're operating outside of the US Constitution. So if we don't have a return to US constitutionalism, all we have is face change. And I'm not really interested in face change. I am interested in institutional change. So what did we have under President Trump? President Trump campaigned as one who would drain the swamp. Well, the swamp got deeper and bigger under Trump. He campaigned as one who was going to unrig the system, because he brought attention to the fact that the system in the United States was rigged. And what did he do? He continued to rig it even more. And in terms of transparency, candidate Trump, promised that he would open the archives of who killed our last real president of the United States, JFK, John F. Kennedy, back in November 22nd, 1963. And of course, subsequently, his brother was murdered, Robert F. Kennedy, who was on his way to becoming president of the United States. And then in that terrible decade of the 1960s, we had Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. killed. We had Malcolm X killed. We had various U.S. citizens killed who dared to stand up for their constitutional rights as U.S. citizens. They were killed, and they were all killed by, of course, the United States government. Of course, this is all documented in the COINTELPRO papers, which, of course, there's thousands of those pages, and I've read thousands of those papers. I still probably have a few thousand left to read, but I've read most of the COINTELPRO papers, and so I understand the dirty, ugly, seamy underbelly of the deep state of my country, and I know what it does to not only people around the world, but it also does to people inside the United States as well. So until we can have the kind of deep institutional change that takes the United States back to constitutionalism and restores checks and balances and denies impunity. Also, I have to mention that Trump is a war criminal because he killed Soleimani. Soleimani was on a peace trip in Iraq and he was murdered by President Trump. So, these people are murderers and they continue the policy of murder. And until we get an entirely different kind of regime that is able to come to power, and I don't know how that's going to happen because some of us have done literally everything we could to take the United States back to free speech and transparent laws, and it hasn't happened so far.
Thank you so much, Professor Cynthia McKinney. Final question. Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? Who do you think is going to be able to end the wars in Ukraine and Gaza?
There's no difference between Trump and Kamala Harris. Trump may be a little more unpredictable. Like he will do maybe one or two things like he did during his presidency that were notable. But in terms of foreign policy, there's no difference. And Kamala Harris actively covered up the murderer of RFK's Jr.'s father, of RFK, Robert F. Kennedy, as he was on his way to becoming the president of the United States. She covered it up as Attorney General because we all know that Sirhan Sirhan had nothing to do with the murder of Bobby Kennedy. But he continues to sit in prison today, and she, as Attorney General, allowed that to happen, plus the elimination of the place where, the hotel where Bobby Kennedy was murdered, it no longer exists. So the destruction of the evidence has taken place, and we will probably never know who actually pulled the trigger, but there is some suspicion of the people who pulled the trigger, but the general population of the United States doesn't even have a clue. And Kamala Harris helped to cover it up. So she's no different. She's probably worse, which is why she's not being fought. And Trump is being actively fought because maybe he might do one or two things differently, but in the end, they both are basically the same, in my opinion.
At the end of our show today, thank you, our special guest, former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney. And I really appreciate the fact that you were patient and tolerant with us, and that we are finally making this interview happen. Thank you.
Some additional thanks that need to be given. It's because I have these time zone issues, and it's early in the morning where I am, but it's very late at night where you are, and we're still able to navigate those as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much to you also, our dear followers. Until we meet again, here is Hamza al-Kinani to enrich the mind, not to arouse emotions. Thank you.